Hey, welcome to Happy in 15. Today we're going to talk about employee experience in IT. So really the definition of it, how do different industry thought leaders define it, and how do we define it in HappySignals. But let's get started from hearing from one of our close friends, Roy Atkinson, who is really a pioneer in the whole customer experience and employee experience. So let's hear from Roy.
I was pleased to see that some research I was looking at from the Gallup organization defines employee experience very much the same way that I do. And I defined it in parallel to customer experience. We usually define customer experience as the overall experience of a customer at every touch point with an organization. And that's how I look at employee experience as well. It's what is the experience like at every place along the way. So how did they find the organization? Was it a good experience getting in touch? How was the hiring process? How was the onboarding process? All of those things. And then when they do come to work, are they given tools that do what they expect? Are they provided the proper support, which is, I'm sure, a large part of the conversation we're going to have today? Are they able to be productive? Is their boss a beast to work for, or is it someone that they enjoy working for? What are their teammates like? It's all of those things. And of course, whenever we talk about experience, we need to be talking about feelings. And I know that that's one of the reasons your organization has happy in the name, is that it is all about feelings, our responses to things. And I think that one of the things that I've talked about in the past and written some articles on is the difference between customer experience and customer experience design. So from the organizational standpoint, it's how do we provide the opportunity for good customer experience? But from the customer experience standpoint, it's how does the person feel when they walk away from one of those touch points that they go through? And the same is true in employee experience.
So that was Roy. And I think the interesting thing was about the feelings, the perception. In different areas. And I think some of the things that we do in HappySignals is actually trying to quantify the feelings and the happiness. But I'll come back to that later. One of the other persons that we interviewed in one of the very first episodes of our podcast was Jacob Morgan, renowned author on the area of employee experience. And Jacob has this equation on employee experience. So let's hear from Jacob how he defines employee experience.
Well, my definition is actually quite simple. I think of employee experience as a combination of three environments that organizations can shape and control. And these are culture, technology, and physical space. So that's really what employee experience is. I actually have something called the employee experience equation. And I say culture times technology times physical space equals employee experience. So simple, straightforward, something that I think everybody can understand.
So Jacob is talking about culture, then the technology side, and of course the physical space. This was done before the COVID, obviously. So I think the physical space part now also involves remote working. So how is the home office? How are the experience when working from remotely? Technology side, I'll touch how that actually kind of belongs to our thinking of people, processes, technology. But then also the culture. Culture is something that we many times define that it's actually the maturity of the organization. Is the organization actually thinking about employee experience first, and then, what do we need to do to improve it? Or is it more like still feeling as a secondary metric? But then sometimes you kind of forget that people already have had their experiences for a long time before you start to try and improve them. So there's something called experience depth. And let's hear from Oscar Berry, one of old colleagues from working in a large Nordic IT company. So let's hear how Oscar defines employee experience.
To me, it's basically if you look at the customer experience, it's the equivalent of when it comes to the employee. All the interactions we have with our employees or employments or workplace through over time. So it's sort of the sum of that experience, and it might be different it is different from one person to another, and it also depends on your past experiences. So if you're new to a company, you might experience something completely different because things have changed.
True.
So it's that also implies that it can be hard to change the experience because you might have lost trust, or you have a lot of negative things to undo to keep people or make people happy and engaged at work.
Yeah, I think something that you'd call maybe related to this is a user experience depth that companies might start to kind of gather.
Exactly, especially like when it comes to the digital employee experience and all the tools we use and the systems we use, and I can't think of any organization that I've worked with where it's not a mess, where it's like where it's not hasn't organically sort of developed into to something that is not orchestrated or aligned. It's a chaotic environment, and that creates sort of. And I used the analogy of like if you don't clean the dishes after dinner, just the pile just adds up. Yeah.
No, that was Oscar's nice metaphor of piling up the depth, and this sometimes is something that actually what Oscar was talking about is the trust. That it's really about the trust, not so much that the depth somehow piles up, but people, end users, start to lose the trust to IT. And one of the things that I'm going to talk in a bit is about how do you share, how do you create this transparency towards the end users as well, so that you start to create the trust. But then let's move forward and see what is employee experience from our point of view as HappySignals when we talk about it. So for us, we need to look at it also from this scale, that what does it mean in IT, but what is also the part of HR. So I think now, in the time of COVID, it has changed a little bit. Employee engagement, it used to have a lot of impact also for the office environments, but when people moved working from remotely from home, actually IT's impactfulness started to rise. So of course in the HR area you have this like ENPS and this kind of metrics that you use, and you have software vendors that actually are focusing on that one. Then you come to, if we were discussing, for example, from Jacob, the technology side. You have your laptops, you have your monitoring, you have your infrastructure, your networks, your VPNs, that kind of stuff. And there's nice vendors to actually measure how does the technology work. Then we also have the process part, and as we all know from the ITSM side, we have great tools like ServiceNow and other competitors there that actually handle the processes. How do you automate processes, how you create those better for the employees. But really what we are focusing today on this one and our topic in HappySignals is the people part. Really the employee experience with the internal services. And that internal service doesn't have to be IT, but it's usually where it starts, because IT usually is longest in thinking about services internally. HR might still be in their inboxes and so on, but basically when they also catch up, they need to start running it as a service, and that's the part where the people matters. And how we define it is that employee experience really should be the outcome of IT. So whatever you do with IT, you need to think, what does that impact does it have for the employee experience? And this is from all the areas, as you can see in this picture. We are talking about mobiles, computers, remote working, office environment, the support services, the enterprise applications, kind of the collaboration with the business stakeholders towards IT. So all that thing you need to understand. Where are the gaps, where the employees are not really feeling the trust, for example. Talking about our experience management framework and how this actually relates to what Oscar was saying, that yeah, you need to measure, you need to understand what the experience is. I always say that your employees already have the experience, and like Oscar said, they might even have the depth of the experience, that they are having this bad experience already for a couple of years. So even if you say that now it's going to be better, they might not trust you. So it comes to the measurement, that if you can quantify how do the employees feel and how much time are they wasting with different services, then you can actually share that back to them and saying that, hey, you told us that this is where you are losing most of the time. We have identified that topic, and now this is what we are going to improve next. And then if you can measure the improvements that you made and tell that back to the employees, that's how you get rid of the kind of the mistrust that you have in the organization. If we come back to a little bit on the people, process, technology to actually show how to use employee experience as this outcome metric. Well, think about improving productivity. That's many times this hot topic for many organizations, so giving hours back to the business. So if you would start from the technology stack, which is very common for us IT people, let's try to improve the boot time of your laptop, like 5 minutes off from that. Does it really have any impact to anything? Most likely not. What if you save something from the process? Well, that might save time from the IT team, but does it actually save time from the end users of the organization? But let's say that you actually save 1 hour of working time a year from each employee when they told you that you saved it. Well, that's an impactful thing. And that's why we think that this is the outcome that IT should really focus on. And really giving you an example is that, let's say that you start from the people. Your end users in UK say that they waste most of their time on CRM issues at home offices. Then you can already drill down into certain processes. So you can see that, okay, hey, it's this process, we can actually automate that one. We don't need approval for somebody to getting their device delivered, for example, somewhere. And then you can look at the technology. Maybe you see that, hey, there's this VPN thing that actually makes everything slow. It's difficult to use. What if we would just maybe start using stuff from the cloud with two-factor authentication? So all these kind of things, you can start to come up with solutions to the real problems that the people are having. That's why employee experience in IT really matters. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up today's episode. Hope this gave you a better understanding. And if you like this topic, go and look at our archive of old interviews. So we have the full interview of Jacob Morgan, of Roy Atkinson, and then Oscar Barry as well. And also the very first episode in our podcast is called Employee Experience in ITSM. So that's from a couple of years back already. So it might actually be an interesting listen to how we saw the world back then, before all these COVID times. But hey, I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe so you get notification for next week's episode. And as we usually say in Happy in 15, stay safe and stay happy.